Our fiscal situation is a 350-pound, 2-pack-a-day smoker on the ICU table.
The U.S. federal budget is on an unsustainable path.
We're gonna be broke really quickly unless we get serious about dealing with our spending issues.
America owes almost $40 trillion. And for decades, we have been told that the bill is about to come due. So then why does none of this come true? Well, because America doesn't borrow like a family or a firm or almost any other country. In fact, what we have now are two very different stories running inside the same debt. One saying that America owes more money than any country in history, and the other saying that investors around the world are still fighting to lend it even more. Okay, but it's national debt. Why should you care? You as the individual? Well, I'll tell you why. Because this debt affects almost every part of your life. Your taxes, your savings, the loan on your home, the money that you'll have access to for Social Security and for Medicare, the government's power to stop the next crash, and even the value of the dollars that are sitting in your bank account. So you cannot sit this one out, because whether you own 100 treasury bonds or you've never even heard of one, this is already affecting you. And I am promising you that by the end of this video, you will know why the debt has not caused a crisis, why America cannot simply print it away, and what would actually have to happen for the real fall to start. Everyone is asking when America will pay off the debt. That's the wrong question. The United States has carried debt for almost its entire life. The real question is whether it can keep making the payments, keep finding buyers, and keep the debt from growing faster than the country underneath it. First, we have to be clear about what this huge number means. The national debt is not one giant bill sitting on the president's desk. It is the total amount the federal government has borrowed over many years, hundreds of years. And each year, the government takes in money through taxes. It then spends that money on things like Social Security, healthcare, defense, roads, aids, federal workers, interest, and a bunch more. And when it spends more than it takes in, it has a gap. This gap is called the deficit. To fill it, the government borrows. And it does that by selling treasury bills, notes, and bonds. These are basically just government IOUs. You give the government money today. The government agrees to pay you interest and return the money later. 1 year of borrowing adds to all the borrowing from years before, and that full stack is the debt. Think of it like a bathtub. The debt is the amount of water already inside. The deficit is the extra water pouring in each year. America can slow the tap, it can make the drain larger. But right now, more water keeps going in than coming out. As of late July 2026, total federal debt was about $39.8 trillion. Roughly $32 trillion was debt held outside the federal government, while the rest was money one part of the government owed to another. That second part is really confusing. When Social Security collects more money than it needs right away, the Treasury uses the cash, and Social Security receives an IOU backed by the government. So part of this national debt is the government owing money to its own accounts. But most of the debt is held by the public, and that's not normal people like you and me. It includes banks, pension funds, insurance firms, investment funds, the Federal Reserve, foreign governments, foreign investors, companies, and this is where one of the biggest myths starts. People like to say that China owns America. And it does own a large amount of treasury debt, but China does not own most of the debt. No foreign country does. A huge share is held inside the United States, and even the debt held overseas is not the same as a foreign country having control over America. Still, this number, $40 trillion, sounds impossible. Why are buyers still showing up? The first reason is the dollar. When a normal country borrows heavily, it may borrow in a currency that it does not control. Imagine you earn money in dollars, but your loan must be paid in euros. If the dollar falls against the euro, your debt becomes harder to pay even if you did nothing new. Countries face the same problem. They collect taxes in one currency, but owe lenders in another. When trust falls, their own currency may drop. That makes the foreign debt even larger. This is when investors panic. The country needs more foreign currency to pay the debt, but fewer people want to lend it. And this is how a currency problem can turn into a debt crisis. America's different though. It's not like all these other countries. Almost all of the federal debt is owed in dollars, and the United States controls the dollar. And that doesn't mean that the government can create endless money without cost, but it does mean that America cannot run out of dollars in the same way a family can run out of cash. The limit is whether those dollars still hold value and whether people still trust the promise behind them. And right now, the dollar is not just American money. It is the main money used across much of the world. Countries hold dollars in their reserves. Banks use dollars for global loans. Basically, when the world is scared, it moves to dollars. And when they need somewhere safe to store those dollars, they often buy treasury debt. US Treasury markets are a major reason for that strength, because they're huge, easy to trade, and widely treated as safe. So the same country that is creating the debt also creates one of the world's most needed financial products. And it sounds strange, but treasury debt is not only a burden, it's also a tool. Treasury bonds can also be used as collateral, and that means that they help back other loans and trades throughout the financial system. This is support number one. America's debt is backed by the global demand for the dollar. But that alone does not explain how the government deals with bills coming due, because every day old treasury debt reaches its end date. So does America pull out trillions of dollars and pay the whole balance down? No, that'd be ridiculous. Most of it rolls over, and that means that it sells new debt and uses the money to repay old debt. The thing is, the United States isn't trying to bring the full debt to zero next Tuesday. It is trying to keep replacing old promises with new ones while continuing to pay interest. In fiscal year 2026, the Treasury is expected to refinance about $9.7 trillion in maturing securities at current market rates. Much of it is just old debt being replaced. But if the new rates are higher than the old ones, that replacement becomes more costly. Let us say that the government borrowed $1 trillion years ago at 1% interest. That costs $10 billion a year. Now that debt comes due. If the government replaces it at 4%, the same trillion costs $40 billion a year. But nothing new was built. The cost rose simply because the old debt had to be replaced at a higher rate. That is one reason that the debt could feel harmless for years and then become much more painful without the balance suddenly exploding. Still, the system works as long as investors believe the United States will pay. And despite every fight, shutdown threat, warning, the government has continued paying its treasury debt. That record matters. A promise is valuable when people believe it will be kept. Imagine two of your friends asked to borrow money. One of them has borrowed from you for years and has always paid on time. The other has never paid you back, not even for a coffee at Starbucks. Even if the first friend now owes you more, you probably still trust them more because of their record. America not only has the deepest record, the largest market, and the strongest power to collect taxes of almost any borrower on earth, it also has the easiest ability to change that. It can change tax rates, it can cut spending, it can sell more debt, and in a true emergency, the Federal Reserve can help keep financial markets working. And if you don't believe me, think about 2008. If you still don't believe me, Let me take you back to March 2020. Even the Treasury market came under stress because investors rushed to get cash. The Federal Reserve stepped in with huge purchases and other tools to restore trading. And that didn't make their debt disappear, but it stopped a market problem from becoming a total system failure. That is support number 2. The Treasury market has a buyer and a central bank standing behind it if the financial system begins to freeze. But this creates a mistake. Some people hear this and say, so the debt doesn't matter. The Fed can just buy it. Not quite, my friend. When the Federal Reserve buys Treasury debt, it creates new reserves in the banking system. That can lower borrowing costs and support markets. But if too much money is pushed into an economy that cannot make enough goods and services, prices can rise. More money begins chasing the same amount of food, homes, cars, labor, and energy. That is inflation. And inflation is one way that the cost of debt can reach you without a formal default. The government pays what it promised, but the dollars it pays back buy less. Imagine today, I borrowed 10 full grocery carts from you, and years later I return those 10 carts, but now every one is only half full. On paper, I return the same number, but in real life, you don't care what it says on paper. You got less. And that is why printing money is not a free escape. America may be able to create dollars, but it can't create trust. And this is also why the Federal Reserve cannot always save the government from rising interest costs. If inflation is low and the economy is crashing, the Fed can cut rates and buy debt easily. But if that inflation is already high, helping the debt market could push prices up again. And then the Fed faces a really bad choice. Do we protect the value of the dollar with high rates? Or do we protect the debt market with lower rates? Because doing both at the same time is so much harder. And a $100,000 loan is crushing for someone earning $20,000 a year. But it's manageable for someone earning $2 million. So the number matters, but the size of the income behind it matters too. And that is why economists often compare debt with GDP. GDP is the full value of goods and services the country makes in a year. It is not the government's income, but it gives us a rough idea of how large the economy is compared with the debt. After World War II, the federal debt held by the public was about 106% of the GDP, meaning that the debt was slightly larger than one full year of economic output. But America didn't collapse. The economy grew, prices and wages rose, tax revenue grew, and the debt became smaller compared with the economy, even though the government did not simply pay every dollar off at once. That is the cleanest path out of debt. Not a sudden payoff, but growth. If the economy grows faster than the debt, the burden becomes easier to carry. But the reverse is also true, and that is what our current forecasts are warning us about. The Congressional Budget Office projects that the debt held by the public to rise from about 101% now to 120% 10 years from now, very much passing the record that was set after World War II. CBO also projects a federal deficit of about $1.9 trillion in 2026. That is support number 3. America still has this very large tax base underneath the debt. But the debt is now growing faster than the base carrying it. And that brings us to the part that affects you most. Interest. When politicians spend money on a road, you may get a road. When they spend it on a soldier, you get defense. When they spend it on interest, the government's just paying for money that they already used. Interest isn't always wasted. People and funds holding treasury bonds receive that money. But from the budget's view, interest pays for the past instead of buying something new today. And that bill is still climbing. CBO projects net interest spending of around $1 trillion in 2026, rising to roughly $2.1 trillion 10 years from now. You may still pay every bond, but more tax money goes towards interest. That leaves less room for roads, research, schools, defense, aid, or tax cuts. Then a war, recession, bank panic, or pandemic arrives. Normally, the government borrows to stop the damage. But if it enters the crisis with heavy debt and huge interest costs, it may have less room to act. And that is the real danger. Not that America wakes up one morning and discovers its bank account is empty, it is that the debt slowly takes away choices. And this is where people on both sides often get the story wrong. One is saying the United States is about to become Greece. The other says that debt never matters because America controls the dollar. They're both missing something. Greece faced a very different problem. It used the euro. It didn't control the currency it owned. It could not create euros on its own. So when investors lost trust, Greece couldn't make its own central bank in the same way that America can use the Federal Reserve. It needed that outside help. And that is why it's not a clean model for the United States. Japan is the opposite example that people use. Japan has carried government debt far above the size of its economy for years without a normal debt collapse. Much of its debt is held inside the country, and its central bank has played a large role in the bond market. But Japan also has faced years of weak growth, low inflation, and an aging population. Its story is showing us that high debt can last much longer than people expect, but it doesn't prove that high debt has no cost. And then there's Britain after World War II. It had carried high debt, and it didn't suddenly vanish. But the years after the war involved tight budgets, taxes, inflation, slow growth, and a long decline in Britain's place at the center of the world financial system. That may be closer to the risks that America is facing. So what is actually holding America's debt system up? This. The dollar is still the main global currency. Treasury bonds are still treated as key safe assets. The United States is borrowing its own money. The country still has a huge economy and tax base, and the Federal Reserve can step in when markets stop working. These reports are great. They tell you why the American debt collapse calls have been wrong. But they're not telling you laws of nature. Trust can weaken. Demand can change. Inflation can limit the Fed. The economy can slow. Politics can turn a manageable problem into a crisis. So what should we the people, what America's built around, you and I, what should we watch? First, we should watch interest rates on Treasury debt. Not a bad day, not a move in the market, a lasting rise. Investors beginning to ask for much higher rates to lend American money. Second, you should watch inflation. If debt worries rise during low inflation, the Fed has room to help. It can lower rates, buy bonds, it can add cash to the system. But if debt stress arrives while prices are rising fast, the Fed's tools become dangerous. Third, watch the buyers. Treasury debt is still widely held and widely used. There is little evidence that it has permanently lost its safe haven role among foreign investors. But that doesn't mean that the demand can never weaken. If foreign governments hold fewer dollars, banks need fewer treasuries, or investors find a real rival asset, the United States may have to offer higher returns to attract the same money. The danger isn't that all these buyers are disappearing at once, it's that the buyers become less willing at the exact same time America needs much more borrowing. Fourth, watch politics. The United States can afford to pay its debts, but Congress can still refuse to give the Treasury the legal room to do it. And that is what makes the debt ceiling so dangerous. It doesn't stop new spending in a clean way. It limits the government's ability to pay bills created by laws that had already passed. A true missed treasury payment caused by politics could shake the whole system because treasury debt still sits inside banks, funds, loans, and markets around the world. The strangest part is that America's greatest debt danger may not be running out of money. It may be us choosing not to pay. Finally, you should watch growth. If the economy grows well, tax income rises and debt becomes easier to carry. If growth slows while debt and interest rate keeps rising, the burden becomes much heavier. And that is why the use of borrowed money matters. Borrowing to build something that raises future growth can help the country carry the debt. A bridge can move goods, research can create new tools, education can raise worker skill. But borrowing for spending that does not raise future income leaves the bill without making the person carrying it stronger. Not all debt is equal. So will America's debt collapse? Yes, but not in the way that most people imagine. There may never be one morning when the number hits a hidden red line and everything shuts down. There is no magic level where 39 trillion works and 40 trillion ends the country. A crisis begins when the supports stop working together. That is the debt crisis chain. And right now, the full chain has not linked up. But that does not mean that the debt is harmless. It means that the damage may arrive slowly. The United States doesn't have to go bankrupt for the debt to change your life. It just has to spend more of its future paying for its past. Because for now, America can still borrow its way out of almost every crisis. But one day, the debt itself may be the crisis. If you enjoyed this video, please check out the 2 others in the series, Why the Economy Hasn't Collapsed Yet and Why the Job Market Hasn't Collapsed Yet. I think both are really interesting. Also, please subscribe so you can see more content like this every week. Thank you for watching The Hidden Media.